There is a country that existed for exactly 8 seconds. Not 8 days, not 8 hours, 8 seconds. Long enough to be born, to be a republic, and to die, all inside a single sentence spoken out loud in a parliament. Most people watching this have no idea it ever happened, because by the time the applause faded, the country was already gone. And here is the strange part. It is not even the shortest one on this list. We tend to think of countries as permanent, solid, drawn onto maps in thick, confident ink, anthems written, borders guarded, embassies built. A nation feels like the kind of thing that takes centuries to grow and centuries to fall. Egypt has existed in some form for more than 5,000 years. Japan traces its founding back to 660 before our era. We assume that becoming a country is the hardest thing a group of people can do. It isn't. Declaring a country turns out to be almost embarrassingly easy. You stand up, you say the words, you raise a flag. The hard part, the part almost nobody manages, is surviving the morning after. And history is littered with nations that didn't, states that flickered into existence and were snuffed out before the ink was dry. Some lasted weeks, some lasted hours. One, as you just heard, lasted less time than it takes to tie your shoes. And here's where it gets slippery, because the whole question depends on what you even mean by the word country. There are two competing definitions, and historians genuinely fight over them. One says a country only exists when other countries recognize it, when the rest of the world agrees you're real. By that strict standard, the shortest-lived recognized nation was the Sultanate of Zanzibar, which managed about 33 days in 1964 between joining the family of nations and being overthrown. Respectable, tidy, 33 days. But the other definition is looser and far more interesting. It says a country exists the moment it has four things: a permanent population, a defined territory, a government, and the ability to deal with other states. Recognition optional. Declare it, tick those boxes, and for that instant, you're a country. And once you accept that looser rule, the timescales collapse from days to hours, and then from hours to seconds. The records get absurd. So, we're going to play by that looser rule for the rest of this video, because that's where the truly strange stories live. Let's start with that 8-second nation, because it is the most absurd, and then it only gets stranger from there. The date is the 10th of October, 2017. The place is Barcelona, the regional parliament of Catalonia, in the northeast corner of Spain. For years, a large part of Catalonia had wanted out of Spain, its own country, its own flag, its own seat at the table of nations. Days earlier, they had held a referendum that Madrid declared illegal, where police in riot gear were filmed dragging voters out of polling stations. The whole region was electric, waiting. And then the Catalan leader stood up to speak. He said the words everyone was waiting for, that he assumed the mandate of the people for Catalonia to become an independent state, in the form of a republic. That was it, the declaration. In that instant, by one reading of international law, a new country existed in Europe. And then, 8 seconds later, he kept talking. Because in the very next breath, he asked the parliament to suspend that declaration, to freeze it, so that he could sit down and negotiate with Spain instead. The country he had just created, he immediately put on pause. Independent Catalonia had a lifespan of 8 seconds, and then it was folded back into Spain before anyone could even react. It was never recognized. No other nation acknowledged it, but under one of the two competing legal definitions of what a country even is, for those 8 seconds, every box was technically ticked. A people, a territory, a government, a declaration, and then nothing. The shortest-lived independent state in modern memory, gone in the length of a held breath. What makes it sting is what came after. That suspended declaration didn't buy peace. It bought the worst of both worlds. Madrid wasn't satisfied. 3 weeks later, the Catalan parliament tried again, voting for a fuller declaration of independence, and this time, Spain responded by suspending the region's autonomy entirely and taking direct control. The leader who had spoken those 8 famous seconds fled abroad to avoid arrest. Others were jailed for years. A country that existed for less time than a yawn ended up reshaping the politics of an entire nation for the rest of the decade. That's the thing about these phantom states. Being brief is not the same as being harmless. But here's the thing about that 8-second figure. It only counts if you measure a country by the words spoken to create it. If instead you measure by something more formal, by an actual legal document signed and adopted, then the record belongs somewhere else entirely, to a country far, far bigger. A country that, for a few hours one freezing morning, technically governed 1/6 of the entire planet, and almost no one living inside it ever knew it existed. Move back in time to January 1918, Russia. The Tsar is gone, overthrown the year before. The country is in chaos, mid-revolution, and a body called the Constituent Assembly finally gathers in Petrograd. This was supposed to be Russia's first real democratic parliament. Hundreds of elected delegates, chosen in the only free nationwide election the country would hold for generations. And the result of that election was the problem. The Bolsheviks, who had already seized power by force months earlier, had lost. They came second. The voters had handed the majority to a rival socialist party, so Lenin was facing an elected parliament that had every democratic right to govern, and that he did not control. They convene inside the Tauride Palace on the 18th of January, and they sit through the night. Outside, that very morning, demonstrators had marched in support of the assembly, and troops loyal to the Bolsheviks had opened fire on them in the streets, killing around 20 people. The new parliament was meeting under the shadow of gunfire before it had passed a single law. In the small hours, they do something historic. They pass a decree declaring Russia a democratic federal republic, the Russian Democratic Federative Republic. A new state, on paper, stretching across 11 time zones, the largest territory on Earth. They pass sweeping land reform. They appeal to the warring powers for peace. The meeting runs roughly 13 hours, deep into the early morning of the 19th. And the whole time, the building is filling with sailors. Armed, restless, loyal not to the parliament, but to the Bolsheviks, to Lenin, who had no intention of letting an elected assembly he didn't control survive the night. Around 4 in the morning, a sailor named Zheleznyakov leans over to the chairman and delivers one of the most quietly devastating lines in political history. He says the guard is tired. That's it. That's how it ends. Not with tanks, not with a decree, but with a tired sailor asking everyone to please go home. The guard is tired. Please wrap it up. The delegates schedule their next meeting for 5 o'clock that evening, and they go home to sleep. When they come back that afternoon, the doors of the palace are locked. Red guards stand at the entrances with rifles. A decree has been posted. The assembly is dissolved. And the brand new Russian Democratic Federative Republic, a country that legally existed for only a few hours, born in a chamber at dawn and killed before dinner, vanishes into a footnote. Within days, it would be replaced by Soviet rule, by a name that would dominate the rest of the century. Lenin called the parliament a relic of bourgeois society and declared it no longer necessary. Almost no ordinary Russian ever knew that for one morning they had briefly been citizens of a democratic republic instead, the road not taken, erased before most people heard it had been offered. So that's the record by the strict legal measure, a few hours. But I want to slow down, because we've been talking about countries that died in seconds and hours. Abstract things. Words in a chamber. The strangest entries on this list are different. They're countries you could actually stand on, touch, build. Countries with their own currency in your pocket and their own stamps on your letters. And those are the ones that get truly bizarre. Because at least Catalonia and that Russian Republic were real places with real populations. What do you do with a country somebody simply built out of nothing in the middle of the sea? The Adriatic, off the coast of Italy, near Rimini. The The year is 1968. An Italian engineer named Giorgio Rosa had spent years and his own money constructing something extraordinary. A steel platform on 9 pylons, 400 square meters, rising out of the open water about 11 kilometers from shore. Crucially, just outside Italian territorial waters. On the 1st of May, 1968, he declared it an independent nation, the Republic of Rose Island. And he did not do it halfway. Rose Island had a president, Rosa himself. It had a government. It printed its own stamps. It announced its own currency, the mill. It had a restaurant, a bar, a nightclub, a souvenir shop, a post office. And in a detail that tells you exactly what kind of dreamer Rosa was, he chose as the official language not Italian, not English, but Esperanto, the invented universal language meant to unite all of humanity. A tiny utopia bolted to the seabed. The tourists came. Boats streamed out from the Italian coast to see the strange little nation on stilts. And that, more than anything, is what doomed it. Rome looked at this platform pulling in visitors just past the edge of its jurisdiction and saw not a utopia, but a tax loophole. A place raising money outside the reach of the Italian treasury. Rumors swirled that it was a casino, a spy base, even a Soviet listening post. None of it was ever proven. It didn't matter. 55 days after Rose Island declared independence, Italian police and tax officers landed on the platform and seized it. The little republic sent a telegram protesting the violation of its sovereignty. It was ignored. And then Italy did something almost theatrical. The following February, the Navy arrived, strapped explosives to the pylons, and blew the entire country up. It took more than one attempt. The platform was stubbornly well built. The sea finished the job, swallowing the wreckage. To this day, Rose Island rests on the floor of the Adriatic, around 13 meters down. The only nation the Italian Republic ever went to war with, and won. And there's a strange legal echo to the whole affair. Because Rose Island sat in international waters, just past Italy's reach, the case became part of a wider conversation about who controls the sea. In the years that followed, the limit of national territorial waters was pushed outward, partly so that no future dreamer could pull off the same trick. Giorgio Rosa, the engineer-president, never stopped believing in his island. He lived to see it become a legend. There's now a hit film about it, and he died in 2017 at 92, having given his blessing for the story to be told. He'd built a country, and a government had to use explosives to unbuild it. Not bad for a man whose answer, when asked why he did it, was simply, why not? You'd think a man building his own country in the ocean was a one-off piece of madness. It wasn't, because around the very same time, on the other side of the planet, someone was trying the exact same thing. And the way it ended is even harder to believe. The South Pacific, 1972. A Las Vegas real estate millionaire named Michael Oliver had a dream of a libertarian paradise, a country with no taxes, no welfare, no government meddling of any kind. He found his spot, the Minerva Reefs, a barely there smudge of coral south of the kingdom of Tonga, mostly underwater at high tide. So he had barges haul sand all the way from Australia, piled it up until the reef broke the surface, built a small tower, raised a flag, and declared the Republic of Minerva. There was a currency, there were coins minted, there was a president. And the kingdom of Tonga, just a few hundred kilometers away, was not amused. What happened next sounds like something out of a storybook, but it is documented history. The king of Tonga, Taufa Ahau Tupou IV, decided to deal with this new nation personally. He assembled an expedition. According to accounts of the event, he emptied out a prison to gather a working party, brought along a 4-piece brass band, boarded a royal vessel, and sailed to Minerva. They landed on the little man-made island. The brass band played the Tongan anthem. The king tore down the flag of the Republic of Minerva, read a proclamation annexing the reefs to his kingdom, and ordered the platform dismantled. The entire country was conquered in a matter of hours. by a monarch and a marching band, without a single shot fired. The neighboring Pacific nations all lined up behind Tonga, terrified that if one libertarian millionaire could dredge up a country from a reef, dozens of other reefs and seamounts across the ocean might be next. And the sea did the rest. Today, Minerva has very nearly been reclaimed by the ocean, sunk back beneath the waves it was dredged out of. There's a detail about Minerva that's almost too perfect. The libertarian dream behind it had been a society with no taxes, no welfare, no government of any kind, total freedom. But when it came to actually defending the territory, that turned out to be the fatal flaw. The people who believed in it didn't want to fight for it. A nation founded on the principle of leaving everyone alone could not summon anyone willing to stop the brass band. It remains one of the cleanest illustrations in history of why declaring a country and keeping one are two completely different things. 8 seconds, a few hours, 55 days, a brass band and a king. By now you might be thinking, these are all curiosities, accidents, stunts, eccentrics with too much money and not enough sense. Easy to laugh at, easy to forget. But there is one more country on this list, and it is none of those things. It existed for a single day, like the others, but this one was a real homeland, with a flag people had sewn by hand, a parliament, an anthem, a name. And almost no one outside that mountain region remembers it ever existed. This is the one that should stay with you. Go back to March 1939. The map of Central Europe is being redrawn fast, and a large country called Czechoslovakia is coming apart at the seams, splitting into pieces under pressure from its powerful neighbors. On the far eastern tip of that collapsing country lies a small, mountainous, mostly forgotten region in the Carpathians, a land of Rusin and Ukrainian villages, fields, and steep wooded ridges. As the larger country dissolves around them, on the 15th of March 1939, its leaders gather in the town of Kust and make a bold, desperate decision. They declare independence. They name their nation Carpatho-Ukraine. They had everything a country is supposed to have: a president, a Greek Catholic priest named Avgustin Voloshin, a parliament, a flag, blue over yellow, an anthem. They even had a name for their tiny volunteer army, the Carpathian Sich. For one bright, terrifying moment, these mountain villages had a country of their own, the first flicker of an independent Ukrainian state in the modern age. But the declaration was less a birth than a trigger. A neighboring country had been eyeing the region for a long time, and now massed its troops on the border, ready to take it. The new president sent off urgent telegrams abroad, pleading for some powerful patron to step in and protect his tiny state, the way other breakaway regions nearby had been protected. The answer that came back was silence. No one would lift a finger. Behind the scenes, the great powers had already quietly agreed to let the region be swallowed. It was simply too small and too inconvenient to defend. So on the very same day they declared their freedom, the takeover began. A large, well-equipped army, tens of thousands of soldiers, with artillery and aircraft, moved in from across the frontier. Against them stood the new state's only defenders, a few thousand lightly armed volunteers, many of them students, with rifles, pistols, and a handful of machine guns. They were outnumbered more than 10 to 1, and they knew how it would end. They stood their ground anyway. That, more than anything, is what makes the story stick. It was not a stunt or a legal technicality. It was people who built a country in the morning and tried to hold on to it by evening. The biggest stand happened near Kust itself, the little capital. The volunteers were quickly overwhelmed. By the next day, the territory had been formally annexed. Within about 72 hours, the occupying army had pushed all the way to the far border, and organized resistance was over. The president slipped across the frontier into Romania, and the country he had led for a day was gone. The region itself simply disappeared from the map, absorbed first into its neighbor, and later, after the war, into the Soviet Union, where it became a quiet province of the Ukrainian Republic. Its leaders scattered into exile. The flag, the anthem, the parliament, all of it folded away as if it had never happened. The country called Carpatho-Ukraine had survived, as a sovereign state, for roughly 24 hours. And yet, of all the nations we have talked about, the 8-second declaration, the platform blown up by the Navy, the reef conquered by a brass band, this is the one historians keep coming back to. Because the others were stunts or technicalities. This was a place where ordinary people built a country and tried to keep it, against impossible odds, for as long as they could. Their state lasted a day. The idea behind it did not. Half a century later, when a far larger Ukraine declared its own independence in 1991, some pointed back to that one impossible day in the mountains as the very first time the dream had been spoken aloud in the modern era. A one-day country that turned out to be a rehearsal for something that would, eventually, last. So the next time someone tells you a country is a permanent thing, carved in stone, remember the cold morning in Kust, when a nation lived and died between one sunrise and the next. And ask yourself how many other countries are out there right now, on maps you've never seen, waiting for the morning after.